Hi everyone, welcome back to another week of Kids Church Online. Well, it looks like we're going to be here at Kids Church Online for even longer than we may have initially thought. The lockdown's continuing, but at least you're back able to go to playgrounds again. Let's take the wins we can find. Now, because we're going to be online for a bit longer, do you know what that means? It means you've got even more time to learn the books of the Bible. Have you got them down yet? Have you memorized them? Can you say them all? Don't forget the New Testament ones while you're practicing the Old Testament ones. I'm really hoping by the time we're back together again in person, you can all impress me so much with how well you know the books of the Old Testament and the books of the New Testament. But for now, let's sing our books of the Old Testament song. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. Hi Frank, it's great to see you again. Nice hat.
Thanks, Michelle. Hi, kids. It's great to be back. So, do you think Elisha would have worn a hat? Like something like this? I think like not much hair. Remember, the boys did call him baldy.
That's true, Frank. I'm not sure about the hat. I don't think he would have worn a hat like that. But I'm glad to see you remembering what we've learnt so far about Elisha. Can you remember what we learnt last week?
I sure can, Michelle. It was incredible. That never-ending bottle of oil that the widow had, filling up all the jars that she was able to collect so that she could sell them to pay her debt and her sons wouldn't need to become slaves. I'm sure she didn't even know what Elijah was doing when he said, "Go and collect all the jars, as many jars as you can find. Then go into your house, shut the door, and fill them with all the oil you have."
I'm sure she was wondering why they'd collected so many jars when she only had a small bottle of oil.
But the bottle didn't run out until all the jars were filled. You know, Michelle, it's a bit like what Elijah did when he stayed with the widow and her son with the flour and the oil that didn't run out until the drought ended.
Oh, great remembering, Frank.
Thanks, Michelle.
You're right. And the story that we're going to hear about Elisha today is similar to another one of Elijah's miracles. You'll just have to see if you can remember which one. Why do you think Elisha is doing miracles like Elijah, Frank?
Let me think, Michelle. Would it to help the people realize that Elisha is a chosen man of God, just like Elijah was?
Now that makes sense, Frank. The people knew that Elijah was chosen by God to be his messenger. So after Elijah was taken up to heaven, they may have wondered who God would choose next. Elisha did miracles like Elijah did to show the people that he was the one that God had sent to rescue and restore those who trusted God's word.
Yes, and remember, just after Elijah was taken up to heaven, Elisha divided the Jordan River by striking it with Elijah's cloak, just like Elijah had done before. That's another miracle that Elisha did, just like Elijah. But that's not the one we're learning about today in the story, right, Michelle?
Correct, but today's story is a little bit like last week's story, Frank, because it involves a woman who had a problem.
Is it the kind of problem that involves oil? Does she need to pay for debt or something?
No, Frank, today's story involves a problem that money can't fix.
Interesting. Where can we find this story in our Bibles, Michelle?
Well, if you'd like to read along in your Bible at home, you can find today's passage in 2 Kings, chapter 4, verses 8 to 37. Now, today's true story begins, Frank, with Elisha travelling to a town called Shunammite. Now, a wealthy woman asked Elisha to stay at her house for a meal.
So, money is not the problem for this woman then. Did she know that Elisha was a man of God?
Yes, she did, Frank. She told her husband that because Elisha was a holy man of God, they should provide him with a room of his own to stay in whenever he came to Shunem.
That's very generous of them. I'm sure Elisha was happy to have a place of his own to stay.
I'm sure he was. Now, one day when Elisha was there, he asked his servant Gehazi to bring the Shunammite woman to him. And when she came, Elisha thanked her for going to so much trouble for him, and he asked her what he could do for her.
Ooh, what did the woman ask for?
Well, she didn't ask for anything, Frank. Gehazi later told Elisha that the woman had no son and that her husband was old. This meant that if her husband died, she would not have any other family who could look after her. Then Elisha told her that this time next year, she would have a son.
Wow, was she excited?
Well, she wasn't sure that it was even possible, Frank. But the next year, at the same time, she had a son.
Just like Elijah had told her. I don't remember something like this from Elijah's miracles. Have I forgotten it, Michelle?
No, Frank, but keep listening. It's coming soon.
What happened next, Michelle? Did the boy grow up to be a prophet like Elisha was?
The boy grew up, and one day when he was out with his father, he said his head hurt.
Oh no.
The father told a servant to take the boy home to his mother, but soon after he got home, he died.
Oh no! Now the woman has the same problem at the start of the story. Her son has died. What will she do next? Will she ask Elisha for help? Will Elisha be able to help? I have so many questions, Michelle.
Calm down, Frank. Calm down. This is not the end of our story. Now, the woman laid her son on the bed in Elisha's room, and she told her husband she needed a servant and a donkey so she could go and see Elisha straight away. She knew that he was the only one who could help her.
Okay, I think Elisha will be able to help her. Her son is dead though, so that's a big issue.
Well, Elisha saw the woman coming, and he sent Gehazi, his servant, to find out what was wrong. But the woman only wanted to talk to Elisha. She told him that her son had died, and Elisha sent Gehazi ahead of them with Elisha's staff to lay on the boy's face.
Maybe God will use Gehazi. What did Elisha do?
Well, he returned to Shunem with the woman, and they found that nothing had happened when Gehazi put Elisha's staff on the boy's face.
Oh, I thought God might have used Gehazi to make the boy better. But he wasn't sick, he was dead. That's the end of everything.
Well, Elisha went into the room and he prayed, and then he laid down on the boy twice.
Hang on a minute there, Michelle. I'm starting to remember what Elijah did.
The boy returned to life, and Elisha gave him back to his mother.
The boy is alive! Wow. He was dead, but now he is alive. That's just like what Elijah did. Elisha is a man of God, just like Elijah was. God is working through him.
And this passage shows us, Frank, that not only does God rule over events in people's life, he rules over life and death.
That's true, Michelle. Why was Gehazi not able to raise the boy to life with Elijah's staff? Why did God only work through Elisha?
Well, Frank, do you remember what Elisha did before he raised the boy?
He prayed to God, asking him to raise the boy. Elisha trusted that God would answer his prayers, and he did.
And only God has power over life and death. No one else. There is nothing outside of God's control.
Only God could solve the problems that the woman had. She had no children, so there would be no one to look after her if her husband died. God provided a child for her.
And her second problem came when her son died. She was in the same position she was in before. Although she was wealthy, money couldn't solve this problem.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
And money couldn't solve the problem of her son dying. Only God could solve that. God worked through Elisha to solve both of these problems for her. When her son died, she trusted that Elisha, a man of God, was the only one that could help her.
And that's why she stayed with Elisha when Gehazi went on ahead. She trusted that only Elisha could help her son as God worked through him.
That's amazing, that God can raise someone from the dead.
Now, Frank, I'm sure that you can think of another time that God did that.
Of course, Michelle. God raised Jesus from the dead after he died on the cross.
And Jesus is alive forever. God defeated death forever through the death and resurrection of his own son, so that everyone who trusts in him can look forward to life forever with God in heaven.
So even though we will die, we don't need to be afraid, because God has promised that those who trust in Jesus' saving death will have life forever with him.
That's right, Frank. And we have this certain hope, no matter what happens here on earth. Nothing can change what Jesus has done for us. He defeated death once and for all.
That's much more impressive than what Elisha did. His miracle was amazing, but just a hint of what God had planned for all the people through Jesus.
And we should be thankful that we have this certain hope and make sure that we tell others what Jesus has done for them too. Well, Frank, it's time to pray now. So it's time for you to say goodbye.
Bye, Michelle. Bye, kids.
See you, Frank. Have a great week. And now it's time for prayer. Here's Jill.
Good morning, everyone, or it might be good afternoon when you see this. It's good to see you all, and I hope that you're all well. And we're now going to do our prayer in relation to our story today. So we know that the Shunammite woman did not give up believing God could help her through Elisha, and we must believe that God will help us as well. So what I would like you to do is prepare for prayer. So please close your hands, close your eyes, and if you would like to say this after me, I will continue on. Dear God, when I'm struggling with schoolwork and just not understanding, please help me to be kind, even in the midst of my frustration. Help me to have patience with myself, my teacher, my parents, and anyone else who might be trying to help me. Help me to listen well to them and to keep trying, even when I feel like giving up. Please give me wisdom and understanding as I try to learn new and hard things. Amen. So all the best for this week, and hopefully we'll see you face to face soon. Bye.
Thanks, Jill. And now here's Jan with our memory verse.
Hi everyone, glad to see you again today. Well, who's been learning their memory verse? I have got 2 visitors today that have learnt their memory verse, and they're going to help me with it. And I really want to say a big thank you to Lola and Vespa from St John's. They've done a great job in videoing the memory verse for this week. Now I've got the memory verse up here today, but I've got it sort of so you've got to try and remember, and even some of it's upside down. Can you read upside down? No. Well, that's to see if you can think in your mind what the memory verse is. Let's try it together. And where does it come from? It comes from Psalm 121, verses 1 and 2. Where do we start? Oh, I think we'll start at the top, up here, and we're going to go all the way around, across the bottom, and up the side. Let's try it. Starting with Psalm 121. Psalm 121, verses 1 and 2. I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. How did you go with that? Bit tricky reading upside down. Well, I'll take that one off and see if you can remember what it is without that one. I'm sure you can. Let's try it again. Psalm 121, verses 1 and 2. I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. All right, last time, which one do you think we should move? Maybe the first one. Let's take that one off and see if you can remember it now. Because next week I'm going to actually add another verse, so I hope you're remembering this one really well. And before we do it for the last time, I'm wondering if you've learnt these two verses and if you could record yourself and send it in so we can see how well you've memorised it. If I don't hear from you, I might give you a call, or Michelle might give you a call. I'd love for you to contact me, do a little video from Mum or Dad's phone and send that in. Okay, let's try it for the last time. Psalm 121, verses 1 and 2. I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Thanks everyone. I hope you're thinking really carefully and memorising that and send in your videos so we can put you on our next week's Sunday school video, kids church video, whatever. Okay, bye everyone.
I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Psalm 121, verses 1 to 2.
Thanks, Jan. Don't remember. Thanks, Jan. Don't forget, send me in your videos of you saying the memory verse so that we can include it in next week's video. And we'll look forward to another verse next week. Same psalm, just one verse more. All right, now it's time for craft. I hope you've got all your things ready. Sheets printed. Today we'll need a stapler, scissors and glue. But mostly there's quite a lot of colouring today. Not all colouring, but a good bit of colouring. So for our first craft, we're going to make a book that tells the story that we learnt today. So you need 2 pages, these 2 pages, okay? I've already coloured mine in, so I'm ready to start. But as always, colouring is the first job, and it will be easier to colour before you make it into a book. Okay, so once you've coloured in your pages, we need to cut along these lines on both pages. So we're going to end up with 6 strips of paper. No tricky cutting today, just straight lines. Super easy, I'm sure you can do it. Alright, that's my first page done. And now the second page. Now, for our book to tell the story correctly, it is going to be important to put things in the right order. Now, you might not be able to work out the order because you know what happens in our story. But if you're a bit confused, don't worry, because at the bottom of each picture, you can see small numbers. Okay? So, we need to fold each of these strips in half first though. So there's a fold line in the middle. So fold it along the line in the middle, each one. So we've got number 1 and 2 together, then number 3 and 4 together, number 5 and 6 together, although I'm doing 7 and 8 right now. I'll find them in a second, and then we need to put them in order. So I'm folding all of my strips in half. Now, once you've folded them in half, you'll be able to see there's an open side and there's a folded side. So what we want to do is put them in order from the first picture to the 12th picture in order with all the open sides together. Does that make sense? So I'm finding number 1. Here's number 1. On the back of number 1 is number 2, but I'm keeping my open sides on this side. So number 1, then I need number 3, open sides on this side, then number 5, then number 7, then number 9, then number 11. Now, we haven't missed out half of our story because they're on the back. Now, once you've got all of your things stacked in a nice even stack, all the open sides on one side, that's the side we're going to staple. You can see on the top of the first page, there's marks for where to put your staples. And now we've made our little book that tells the story that we learned today. The woman helped Elisha. She had a son. Her son died. She went to see Elisha. Gehazi wasn't able to help the boy, but then Elisha prayed and he came back to life, and it tells you where you can find this story. So have fun making your book, and perhaps use your book to help to tell your parents what you learnt about today. Now, our second craft today also needs 2 pages. Everyone needs one of these pages, but you only need one of these pages for the whole family. There's enough for 6 people on this page. I don't think anyone's going to need more than 6. So 1 copy of this for the whole family, but you need 1 copy of this one each. So start off with colouring in this page and colouring in just 1 picture of the woman and her son. Then the next thing I'm going to do is cut that picture out. Oh, no, take it. So not much tricky cutting here. Just following the lines around the outside. Got a picture of the woman and her son, who's now alive. Okay. Now for this one, we're going to start off with a little bit of tricky cutting. We need to cut along this line here and along this line here. So we'll fold our page in half and do a little snip. And let me see if I need to extend my cutting just a little bit, but not much. Then once we've cut all the way to the dotted lines, we need to do some folding. Gosh, tricky folding. Okay, we'll do the rest of that folding in a second. For now, we're doing this folding. So straight down the middle is fold number 1. So we fold that one like this. Then fold number 2. Puts Gehazi on the front of our card. Now this is the next slightly tricky part. This one we need to fold so when you're folding this part, you need to fold the middle bit up, and then you can fold this one and this one. Now what we're doing is making a pop-up card. So we need to glue the woman and her child onto this shaded bit down here with a glue stick sign on it. So let's do that now and we'll see how the whole thing works. See if our pop-up card works. Don't put any glue outside of that grey area because then you might end up gluing it down and it won't pop up. It'll lie down. Okay, so I'm just pressing my glue in like this, making sure it's going to pop up, and then I'm going to start on my folding again. Okay, fold it down the middle, fold it down this way. All right, let's see what we've got. Gehazi couldn't raise the boy to life even with Elisha's staff, but when Elisha prayed, the boy came back to life. Look at that, he's popping up. He's alive. There you go. You can use this card to tell the story as well. Not quite as detailed, but I hope you remember what we've learnt about today. I hope you're enjoying learning about Elisha. We'll be learning more about Elisha next week, and I hope you'll join us then. Bye.